Now we're transferring our cooled wort from the brew kettle through our heat exchanger and into the fermentation tank. Remember, we're adding oxygen on the way as well, so we can feed the yeast some oxygen, very important for yeast growth. We're also taking some samples over there. As the beer or the wort is running into the fermenter, we then add the yeast that's going to be fermenting it. And as it rises up, it blows out all the excess air in the tank. We'll see a lot of bubbling in our blow-off buckets over here, which is important to know that our tank is well sealed up and that we won't be able to get stray bugs and such crawling in through the cracks and crevices if they weren't sealed up properly. In about 12 to 18 hours, we should see some action in our blow-off bucket of some CO2 being pushed out of the tank and through this bucket. This bucket is actually called a fermentation lock. The CO2 goes through a sanitizer solution and then out. That's blocking another path that bad microbes could get up and into our beer through this blow-off line. So it's really important, again, to keep the beer and the yeast isolated in this tank. Once we see that action, we're feeling pretty good about it. If we're in an ale fermentation, we should see that fermentation subside in 4 to 6 days. Some yeast take longer, some go more quickly. So the whole while, we're actually monitoring the level of sugars still in the wort now turning to beer. When we've fermented out all the way, we don't see those sugar levels dropping anymore. We know that our primary fermentation is done. If we were doing a lager fermentation, it might take a little bit longer. That primary fermentation might take up to a week or a little bit longer. You just have to monitor it as you go. Once we reach the attenuation, which means all of the sugars have been consumed by the yeast that the yeast can consume, then we start a process of turning down the tank to drop the temperature in it slowly. The first step is just to hold the temperature of the tank at either 70 where it was fermenting or slightly cooler for a couple of days, doing what we call a diacetyl rest. Diacetyl is a flavor that can come out in finished beer, and it tastes kind of like butterscotch or buttery, and it's not a desirable flavor in most beers. So this is an opportunity for us to get rid of it. Usually it takes a day or two for us to eliminate the precursor to the diacetyl and get it out of the beer. We will then continue to drop the temperature of the beer over a few days to get down to about 33 degrees. Once we're at 33 degrees, the beer will condition there for a few more days or until we actually go ahead and filter, clarify it, and send it to serving. The total time of the fermentation between primary and conditioning for ales, if you will recall, usually around 14 days, 17 days, something like that. For lagers, it can be significantly longer, 3.5 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, something like that. Again, depending on the style of beer, alcohol content, a lot of other considerations. But that is broadly some rules you can live by. Once we've got that beer turned down, we'll be taking the final samples. At this point, we'll be able to calculate the amount of alcohol in the beer, and it's now essentially ready to be filtered and transferred to the serving vessels.